A young billionaire walked in on his maid dancing. She didn't see him, but in that moment, he saw everything, and nothing in that mansion would ever be the same. The mansion was quiet. Too quiet. It was the kind of silence that made your skin crawl. The kind that swallowed laughter before it could reach the walls. The kind that felt like a warning. Malia stood by the kitchen sink, scrubbing a wine glass that probably cost more than her monthly salary. Her hands moved fast, but her mind was far away. Somewhere softer, somewhere kinder. She was only 24, but her eyes looked older. Tired. Like someone who had seen too much too soon. The mansion belonged to Elijah Grant, the youngest tech billionaire in the country. He was rich, powerful, and cold as steel. Nobody really knew him. He barely spoke, never smiled, and moved like a shadow through the house. He lived with his fiancée, Ava Daniels, a fashion model, glamorous and sharp-tongued. Ava treated Malia like dirt beneath her heels. She shouted, she mocked, and sometimes she didn't even see her at all, like Malia was invisible. Malia! Ava's voice rang through the hallway like a fire alarm. Malia flinched. She wiped her hands quickly and rushed to the living room. "Yes, ma'am," she said, eyes low. Ava sat on the white couch in a tight silk dress, flipping through her phone with long red nails. "You didn't shine my heels." Again. She pointed at the black stilettos on the floor. "I'll do it now," Malia said quietly. "You should have done it an hour ago." "Do I have to babysit you every day?" Ava snapped, tossing the phone beside her. "I'm sorry, ma'am." "You're always sorry. That doesn't make you less useless." Malia bent down, picking up the shoes with careful hands. Her heart ached, but her face stayed calm. She had learned to hide the pain. Tears didn't help. They never did. Behind her, the front door opened. Elijah had returned. He stepped inside, dressed in a crisp black suit. His eyes scanned the room briefly before he walked past without a word. No greeting, no nod, nothing. Ava's voice sweetened instantly. "Baby, you're back." Elijah gave a small nod, heading upstairs. Malia stood, holding the shoes like broken wings. Ava scoffed. "Next time, try not to disappoint me in front of him." That night, after the house went quiet, Malia lay on the tiny mattress in the servants' quarters. She pulled out a folded picture from under her pillow. A photo of her mother, smiling beside her in front of a small shop. Back when things made sense. Back when love didn't feel like something only rich people deserved. She whispered a prayer. "God, just let me make it through one more day." What she didn't know was, tomorrow everything would begin to change. The sun rose slowly over the city, washing the mansion in soft gold. But inside, nothing felt warm. Malia woke before the alarm. She always did. She slipped out of bed, bathed in cold water, tied her hair into a low bun, and put on her black uniform. It was stiff from yesterday's ironing, the collar tight against her neck, just the way Ava liked it. By 6:30 a.m., the kitchen smelled of fresh coffee and warm bread. Malia moved quickly, preparing breakfast, dusting the staircase, and setting the dining table with silverware that gleamed, like it had never been touched. She was halfway through polishing the chandelier when she caught her reflection. In the glass, she paused. For a moment, she didn't recognize the girl staring back. Dark circles under her eyes, lips pressed in a line, shoulders slumped. Was this really her? Once she used to smile without thinking. Once she had dreams of becoming a teacher, maybe even opening her own school. But now she lived between whispers and orders. Never seen, never heard. Just tolerated. She leaned closer to the glass, breathing softly against it. "Who are you now? Still here?" Ava's voice rang from the top of the stairs. Malia turned quickly, hands behind her back. "Yes, ma'am." "Bring my smoothie. Not too cold this time unless you want me to pour it on your head." "Yes, ma'am." Malia hurried to the kitchen, her reflection left behind in the chandelier. Later that day, as she cleaned the guest bedroom, she opened a drawer and found a tiny bottle of perfume. Expensive. Rose and amber. She picked it up and smiled faintly. It reminded her of something. Her mother's scent, maybe. A feeling. She closed her eyes for just 1 second, then placed it gently back where she found it. Downstairs, Ava laughed loudly on a video call. "She's just the maid. Honestly, I don't know how Elijah puts up with her here." Malia heard it, of course. She always heard everything. But this time, she didn't cry. She stood up straighter, wiped her hands on her apron, and walked out without a sound, because somewhere deep in her chest, something small and stubborn whispered, "One day they'll see you." And soon that day would come, faster than anyone expected. The house was busy that morning. Ava was packing for a fashion event in Johannesburg. 3 days away, 2 nights, and a private suite waiting with her name on it. The staff tiptoed around her as she tossed heels, dresses and makeup into 2 giant pink suitcases. "Elijah," she called, applying lipstick in front of the mirror. "I left a list of what I want done before I'm back. Tell Malia to stop folding my dresses like towels. I want silk treated like silk." Elijah stood by the bedroom window, phone in hand as usual. "Noted," he said flatly. "Ugh." Ava rolled her eyes. "Anyway, I've booked the flight. If the driver isn't on time, I'll fire him myself." By 10 a.m., the sound of rolling luggage filled the marble hallway. Ava appeared in full glamour, white sunglasses, red lips, and a purse that cost more than Malia's life savings. She walked past Malia without a word, then paused. "You better not mess anything up while I'm gone. And stay out of the master bedroom. That space isn't for people like you." "Yes, ma'am," Malia said calmly. Ava didn't look back. She simply clicked her heels down the steps and out the door. Moments later, the car sped off. And just like that, silence. Real silence. Malia stood by the staircase, mop in hand, listening to the stillness wrap itself around the house like a soft blanket. No shouting. No insults. No slammed doors. She let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. And then, a small smile tugged at her lips. She tiptoed into the kitchen and turned on the radio. Afro beats flowed into the air. The music filled the walls with life. She danced a little as she swept. She even laughed. Her body moved without fear, without shame. Then she thought, "Why am I still wearing this uniform?" She rushed to her tiny room beside the laundry area. At the bottom of her suitcase was her favorite dress, a burgundy gown with soft sleeves and a gentle flow. She had saved for months to buy it. She changed quickly, added a little lip gloss, and looked at herself in the cracked mirror. It was the first time in months she looked like Malia, not the maid. Not you, girl. Just Malia. She twirled once and whispered to herself, "Today I dance." The house was hers for the moment. She sang with the radio, danced barefoot on the marble, and even opened Elijah's fridge to steal a sip of the imported mango juice he always kept locked away. She wasn't scared. For once, she wasn't invisible. She was alive. What she didn't know was that Elijah's meeting downtown had just been cancelled, and the driver was already turning the car around. And very soon, the billionaire who had never truly seen her would walk in and never look at her the same again. The mansion was golden in the late afternoon light. Malia floated through it like a queen. The burgundy dress flowed around her legs. Her natural hair bounced freely as she twirled down the empty hallway, singing softly along to the music playing from the kitchen radio. She held a wooden spoon like a microphone, dancing like no one was watching, because no one was supposed to be. She stepped into the master bedroom to dust the shelves, her bare feet light on the polished floor. The sunlight poured through the windows, painting her skin in warm shades of amber. The dress hugged her gently, and her smile, soft, real, wide, lit up the room more than any chandelier could. She moved with joy. She moved like freedom. And she had no idea Elijah Grant had just walked in. The front door had creaked open minutes earlier. No one heard it over the music. Elijah stepped in quietly, surprised by the sound echoing through the house. He paused at the stairs, confused. Ava was supposed to be away. No visitors, no noise. Then he heard it. Laughter. He climbed the steps slowly, his footsteps light, like he was intruding on something private. When he reached his bedroom door, it was open just a crack, and through it he saw her, Malia, spinning barefoot in his room, singing into a spoon, the dress moving like wind around her. She didn't see him. She was lost in the moment, glowing, graceful. For a full minute, Elijah didn't breathe. He leaned against the door frame, mesmerized. He had known her for months, quiet, polite, invisible. But this was someone else. This was a woman. And then, he chuckled. It was quiet, but enough. Malia froze. She turned, her heart jumping into her throat. Her eyes met his. Her body stiffened. Mr. Elijah," she stammered, voice barely above a whisper. He raised one hand, not angry, just calm. "Don't stop," he said softly. You were dancing so beautifully." Malia's face turned red. She backed away, bumping into a nightstand. I didn't know you were home. I didn't mean to be in here. I was just... I know," he said, stepping into the room now. His eyes weren't cold. They weren't distant. They were curious, warm. "I've just never seen you like this," he added. Malia stood frozen, the music still playing faintly behind her. Her fingers gripped the edge of the table for support. "I'll change and go back to work," she whispered. "You don't have to," Elijah said. "Not yet." His voice was different, gentle, real. For the first time since she entered the mansion months ago, he looked at her. Not past her, not through her. At her. And in that quiet moment, Malia realized something dangerous and wonderful. The way he looked at her had changed. And deep down, something inside her had changed too. The next morning came like it always did. But everything felt different. Malia stood in front of the mirror in her tiny room, staring at her reflection. The burgundy dress was folded neatly on her bed. She had changed back into her black maid uniform, but somehow, it didn't fit the same. It felt tighter, like it belonged to someone else now. She tied her apron and took a deep breath. It was just a moment, she told herself. He probably forgot about it already. Still, her fingers trembled slightly as she poured Elijah's coffee. She carried the tray into the study with her head down, like always. He was seated at the long table, laptop open, glasses resting on his nose. Sunlight spilled across his shirt. She placed the tray gently in front of him. "Your coffee, sir?" she said. Elijah looked up, slowly. "Thank you, Malia." Her heart jumped. He said her name. Not you, not the maid. Her name. She looked up slightly, startled. "You're welcome, sir." He paused, eyes lingering on her face. Then softly, "You don't have to call me sir every time, you know." She blinked. "It's out of respect." He smiled faintly. Respect doesn't always have to sound so formal. Malia didn't know how to respond, so she nodded and stepped back toward the door. "Malia," he called again, just as she reached the doorway. "Yes, sir." "About yesterday," he began. Her breath caught. Elijah leaned back in his chair, his eyes searching her carefully. "I didn't mean to startle you. He looked down at his coffee. "You looked happy and free. I liked seeing that side of you." Malia stood still, her fingers curling around the edge of the doorway. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It won't happen again." "I didn't say that," he replied, meeting her eyes. "Maybe it should." There was a silence between them. Thin, electric, strange. Then the front door opened downstairs. A delivery man. The moment broke. Malia gave a small nod and slipped out of the room quickly, her heartbeat loud in her ears. Elijah sat alone, fingers tracing the rim of his coffee cup. His thoughts didn't return to his emails. They stayed on her. On the girl, who danced barefoot in his room and smiled like the world hadn't crushed her spirit yet. And for reasons he couldn't explain, that image stayed with him all day. The afternoon drifted by slowly. Malia swept the corridor with steady hands, but her mind was busy. Every time she paused, she heard Elijah's voice from earlier. Maybe it should. What did he mean? Why would a man like him care if she was happy? For months, he had walked past her like she was invisible. Now he was remembering her name and watching her dance. She shook her head. "Don't overthink it, Malia. Just do your work." But it was too late. Something had shifted and she felt it in her chest. Downstairs, Elijah was in the living room. Alone for once. No Eva, no staff, no meetings. Just him in the silence. He was reading a report on his tablet but barely understood a word. His thoughts kept drifting. Not to stocks or deadlines, but to her. The way she moved. The way she lit up when she thought no one was looking. There was something about that moment yesterday that he couldn't shake. It was like watching a sunrise after months of gray skies. He stood up suddenly, walked to the kitchen and made 2 cups of coffee. Then, without thinking too hard, he walked to the hallway where Malia was polishing the wooden frames. She turned, surprised. "Sir?" He held out the cup. "You look like you could use a break." She stared at it for a second, confused. "For me?" He nodded, slowly, carefully. She took the cup from his hand. Their fingers brushed. Neither pulled away too fast. They sat in the quiet hallway, both sipping slowly. No talking, just breathing the same still air. Malia watched him from the corner of her eye. He looked human, not like the unreachable billionaire in magazines, but like a tired man who maybe needed this silence too. "You don't talk much," she said suddenly. He glanced at her. "Neither do you." She smiled, surprised he noticed. "I guess we both got used to being quiet." Elijah looked at her, then said, "I used to love talking, but people only heard what they wanted." She looked down at her coffee. "Same here." Another quiet moment passed between them, but this one felt peaceful, comfortable, familiar. Then Elijah stood, adjusting his watch. "Thanks for sharing the silence." Malia looked up. "Anytime." As he walked away, he glanced back and said, "And you can wear that dress again. You looked happy." She said nothing, but her heart thudded loud enough to fill the space he'd just left behind. She stood still for a long time. Then she whispered to herself, "What's happening to me?" Because she didn't just feel seen. She felt remembered. The peace didn't last long. 3 days after her dramatic exit, Ava came crashing back into the mansion like a thunderstorm in heels. The door flung open at 10:17 a.m. Her voice filled the house before her bags even touched the floor. "Where's my bag? Where's Malia? Who moved my Fendi bag?" Malia stepped out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Welcome back, ma'am." Ava spun, sunglasses still on. "Don't welcome back me. I left this place in one piece." She walked straight past Malia and into the living room, eyeing the sparkling floor with suspicion. The piece Malia had tasted vanished like steam. Within minutes, Ava was inspecting every corner, sniffing her designer throw pillows like a bloodhound. "What is this scent in the living room?" she snapped. "It's not mine. Did you spray something?" "I used lavender oil to clean the shelves, ma'am." "You've never—" "I didn't ask for creativity. I asked for cleanliness." Ava's voice cracked like a whip. "And why is my vanity drawer rearranged?" "I only dusted lightly. I didn't touch your things." "Oh, really?" Ava marched upstairs, heels stabbing the floor. Malia followed slowly, heart pounding. When she reached the top, Ava was standing frozen in front of her bedroom door. "What is this?" she hissed. Malia looked. It was the burgundy dress, hers, freshly, washed and folded neatly on the side table in the laundry, area Ava shared with the guest suite. Ava picked it up like it was poison. "You wore this," she accused. "Didn't you?" Malia's voice trembled. "It was my off day. You were gone. I didn't damage anything." Ava's face twisted. "You wore this. In this house? Around my fiancé?" Malia said nothing. Ava's lips curled into a smirk that was more dangerous than anger. "You think just because you wore your little dress like a peasant while I was gone, you've become something? Let me remind you who you are." Downstairs, the door opened. Elijah was home. He stepped in, suitcase in hand, surprised by the rising noise upstairs. As he ascended the stairs, Ava's voice became sharper. "Listen to me carefully, little girl. You're nothing in this house. Nothing but a mop with legs." Malia lowered her gaze, blinking fast. "And if I ever catch you trying to impress Elijah again, I will make sure you leave this house in tears." Just then, Elijah reached the hallway. "Ava," he said calmly. She turned, startled. Elijah's eyes moved from Ava to Malia, who was trembling, head bowed. "What's going on?" Ava faked a light laugh. "Oh, just correcting your little helper here. She's been getting too comfortable." Elijah didn't smile. He didn't nod. Instead, he looked at Malia. "Are you all right?" Malia hesitated, then whispered, "Yes, sir." But her voice cracked. He noticed. Then he looked back at Ava. His eyes were quiet but dangerous now. "A word," he said, and gestured for Ava to follow him into the study. As they walked away, Malia stood in the hallway alone, her arms wrapped around herself. The warmth of the past few days had vanished, and in its place, ice had returned. But what Malia didn't know was, Elijah's silence wasn't what it used to be. This time, it was building into something louder than she'd ever imagined. The mansion was tense, not the usual cold silence, but the kind that crackled with something unspoken, something waiting to erupt. Malia moved quietly, folding laundry in the service quarters. Her hands were steady, but her mind wasn't. Ava's words still rang in her ears. The way she held that burgundy dress like it was evidence of betrayal. The way she looked at her like dirt. But it wasn't that which hurt the most. It was the way Elijah had said nothing. No defense. No protest. Just silence. Again. She told herself she was used to it. But a part of her had hoped for something more. Downstairs, Elijah stood in the study with Ava. His hands were in his pockets, shoulders tense. Ava sat on the edge of his desk, still fuming. "She's just a maid, Elijah. Why are you so stiff about this?" Elijah didn't look at her. "You humiliated her." "Oh, please." Ava laughed dryly. She humiliated herself, dancing in this house like she belongs here, wearing that dress. "She does work here," Elijah said calmly. "She belongs here more than some of your bags." Ava's eyes narrowed. "So that's what this is? You're defending her now? I'm asking you to respect people. That's all." Ava stood, her voice rising. "Since when do you care about maids and their feelings?" Elijah's jaw tightened. "Since I realize the people who treat them like they're nothing usually have nothing inside themselves." Ava's mouth fell open. "I'll be in my room," Elijah said, already turning away. "Don't bother joining me." Ava's face turned red. She stormed out of the study and into the hallway, straight toward Malia, who was just passing through with a basket of towels. "You think you've done something special, don't you?" Ava spat. "You think because you twirled in a dress and caught his eye, you've made it?" Malia said nothing. "I've seen your kind," Ava seethed. "Quiet little village girls thinking their smiles can climb ladders." "I'm just doing my job," Malia whispered. Ava stepped closer. "You're doing more than that, aren't you?" She raised her hand. Time slowed, but before it could land, a strong hand caught her wrist. "Elijah." His voice was calm, but it cut deeper than Ava's rage. "Don't you ever try that again?" Ava's eyes widened. "Elijah." "Not in my house." The silence was thick. Malia stood frozen, her mouth parted in shock. Elijah let go of Ava's wrist, but his stare didn't soften. "Leave her alone." Ava's lips trembled, not with fear, but with humiliation. "I can't believe you," she whispered. "I'm tired, Ava," Elijah said simply. "Tired of pretending you haven't become someone I don't even recognize." Ava stepped back like she'd been slapped instead. "You're choosing her over me," she said bitterly. "I'm choosing what's right." He turned to Malia, his voice gentle now. "You okay?" Malia nodded, too stunned to speak. "Go rest," he said softly. "You've done enough today." As Malia walked away, something in her heart cracked open. For the first time, someone had stood up for her. For the first time, she wasn't alone. Behind her, Ava stormed upstairs, and Elijah exhaled deeply, running a hand through his hair. Upstairs, Ava's footsteps were loud and angry. For a moment, the house went quiet again. But then Elijah heard loud banging, drawers opening, closet doors slamming. He went up to check and saw Ava in the bedroom, throwing clothes into her suitcase. "You're leaving?" he asked calmly. She didn't look at him. "I can't believe you humiliated me like that," she said. In front of a maid. Elijah stood by the door, watching. "This isn't about her. It's about how cruel you've become." Ava spun around, angry. "So now you're taking the maid's side? Over me? Your own fiancé?" "I'm not choosing sides," Elijah said. "I'm choosing what's right." Ava's face was red with rage. "You'll regret this," she snapped. She grabbed her suitcases and pushed past him without saying goodbye. A few seconds later, the front door slammed shut. The storm had passed, but it left Elijah standing alone in the quiet. That evening, the house was unnaturally still. No Ava, no orders barked from staircases, no heels tapping on marble like war drums. Just the quiet hum of electricity and the distant sound of rain beginning to fall outside. Malia sat on the small bench behind the laundry room, her burgundy dress in her lap. She wasn't wearing it. She just needed to hold it, to remember that moment before everything turned again. Elijah was in the dining room alone, fingers resting around a warm mug. He hadn't eaten since the incident. He barely touched his drink. His mind wasn't in the room. It was still playing back the look on Malia's face when Ava tried to slap her. The fear. The quiet heartbreak. The way she looked at him. Unsure if she was worth defending. He couldn't get it out of his head. He stood up, walked past the chandelier, past the hallway, until he reached the back patio, where he saw her, sitting alone, dress folded across her knees, hair wrapped in a scarf, eyes distant like she was somewhere far from this house. He stepped closer. "Do you mind?" he asked gently. Malia turned quickly, surprised. "Oh, no, sir. I mean, no. You can sit." He sat beside her, the bench creaking under his weight. Rain tapped gently on the edges of the roof. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Elijah broke the silence. "How long have you worked here?" Malia blinked. 8 months. "And before that?" She paused. "I worked at a small restaurant. Washing plates, cleaning." He nodded. "Before that?" She hesitated, then looked down at her hands. "I was supposed to go to teacher's college. I passed the entrance exams. But then, my mother died. I had to start working." Elijah turned to her slowly. "And your father?" "Never knew him," she said quietly. "It was just me and Mama. After she passed, the landlord kicked me out. I went from house to house until I ended up here." Elijah said nothing, but the weight in his eyes grew heavier. "I didn't plan this life," Malia added almost defensively. "But it's mine now. I know what it's like," he said. She turned to him, surprised. "You. I lost my parents when I was 16. Moved from relative to relative. Built everything from scratch. People think money erases the past, but it doesn't." Malia looked at him, her expression softening. "You don't act like someone who's ever been hurt." He gave a small laugh. "That's the trick. You act like stone so people stop asking." She nodded slowly. "I guess I act like air so people forget I'm even there." He turned to her, really looked at her. "You're not invisible," he said gently. Their eyes met again, and in that moment the pasts they both carried didn't matter as much, because here they were, two quiet souls on the same bench finally being seen. The next morning felt different. Malia moved through the house with her usual grace, cleaning the surfaces, folding towels, dusting the corners no one ever noticed. But something had changed. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't hiding. Her shoulders were straighter, her eyes brighter. She caught her reflection in the hallway mirror. She didn't look like someone waiting to disappear anymore. And then it happened. Elijah walked past her with a plate of toast in his hand. "Malia," he said casually, "I saved you some." She froze. He turned back, held the plate out and added, "The toast. And I made tea. There's extra in the pot." Malia blinked. "You made tea?" He nodded. "I can boil water, you know." She laughed softly, covering her mouth. "Wow, the great Elijah Grant using a kettle. Don't tell anyone," he said with a smile that reached his eyes. She followed him into the kitchen, and for the first time, they ate breakfast, not like boss and maid, but like two people who were no longer afraid to take up space together. They talked about random things, favorite foods, music, the way Lagos traffic could make a sane person scream. He laughed when she mimicked the sound of impatient taxi drivers. She smiled when he told her he once got lost in a market for hours and had to bribe a boy with meat pie to show him the way out. Time passed gently, like water slipping through fingers. Later that afternoon, Malia changed into her burgundy dress again. Not to dance, not to impress, just because she wanted to feel like herself. She was wiping down the glass table when Elijah walked in, paused and stared. "You wore it again." "I did," she said without looking up. "You look like someone who belongs here." She raised her eyes slowly. "Maybe I do." He smiled, then cleared his throat. "Would you like to have dinner with me tonight? Just here, nothing fancy." Malia's heart skipped. "You mean, like a date?" He chuckled. "Like a meal. Between two people who don't need to pretend anymore." She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, I'd like that." That night, she set the table with quiet care, lit a single candle, served rice and stew, not the kind served at rich events, but the kind that felt like home. Elijah arrived dressed down, no suit, just a soft navy shirt. They ate, they talked, they laughed, and as the candle burned low, Malia realized something that made her chest feel warm and terrifying all at once. She wasn't invisible anymore, And the man who once saw her as just a shadow was starting to see her as something much more. The night air was gentle. A soft breeze crept through the open balcony doors, lifting the curtain just slightly. The stars over the city blinked quietly above the mansion. Inside, Malia stood barefoot on the cool floor, clearing the plates from dinner. Her burgundy dress fluttered as she moved. Her heart hadn't slowed since he called it a meal between two people who don't need to pretend anymore. Elijah leaned against the doorframe of the living room, holding his glass of water, watching her without trying to hide it. "You clean up too fast," he said. She looked over her shoulder, smiling. "Old habits." He stepped further in. "You know, I've been thinking. Dangerous," she teased gently. He chuckled. "That day when I saw you dancing, I wanted to say something. I just didn't know what." Malia looked down, suddenly shy again. "I didn't mean to be disrespectful," she said. He shook his head. "You weren't. You were free. And beautiful. And for the first time, this house didn't feel like stone." The silence stretched between them, soft and full. Then, a familiar beat began to play. Malia had left the Bluetooth speaker on low volume in the background. A song came on, one she always played when she was alone. A soft highlife tune, the one she danced to that day in his room. Their eyes met. "I remember this song," Elijah said. She smiled faintly. "I used to dance to it alone, when I was happy, or trying to feel happy. And now?" She hesitated. "Now, I don't feel so alone." He stepped forward just enough to make her heart skip. "You never finished the dance." Malia blinked. "You want me to dance again?" "No," he said gently. "I want to dance with you." She stared at him, unsure. He held out a hand. "Just once." Slowly, cautiously, she placed her hand in his. He pulled her in, one hand resting on her waist, the other holding her fingers. They moved awkwardly at first. Elijah wasn't much of a dancer, and Malia was suddenly too aware of everything. His breath, his closeness, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. But then she laughed, and he laughed with her. Their bodies found rhythm, not in perfection, but in presence. She rested her head on his chest. He closed his eyes, and for a full minute the world outside ceased to exist. Just a maid in a borrowed dress. Just a billionaire who didn't know how to love until now, moving slowly through a house that had never known such softness. Then the music faded, and they stood there in silence, not touching, not speaking, but both knowing deep down something had shifted again. Not in fear, not in confusion, but in hope. The following days passed like a dream wrapped in silk. Nothing loud happened. No declarations, no flowers, no kisses in the rain. But something was growing. Quietly, softly. Elijah began joining Malia in the kitchen more often. Sometimes just to sip tea while she worked. Sometimes to help chop vegetables, even if he did it badly. "You're cutting the onions like you're afraid of them," Malia teased one afternoon. "I am," he replied. "They bite first." She laughed, and he watched her like that sound alone had become his favorite melody. He started eating whatever she cooked without question. She started teasing him like she wasn't scared anymore. And every night they would meet on the balcony. No plans, no pressure. Just soft conversation under starlight. That's where they talked about things they never told anyone else. About Malia's dream of starting a daycare someday. About Elijah's memory of sitting in a dark hostel room after his parents' funeral, promising himself he'd become too rich to ever feel pain again. "You did become rich," Malia whispered one evening. Elijah looked out into the darkness. But the pain never left. Malia turned to him. "Maybe it wasn't supposed to." "Why?" he asked. "Because maybe the pain is what teaches us how to love gently." That night he didn't say anything, but when she turned to leave, he reached out and gently touched her fingers. He didn't hold her. He didn't pull her close. He just let her know. "I see you." And she smiled in return as if to say, "I see you too." The next morning something changed again. Elijah came down for breakfast and found Malia already in the kitchen, wearing the same black uniform she'd worn the first day he met her. He frowned slightly. "Going back to that?" She shrugged. "Some parts of me I still need to hold on to." He nodded. "That's fair. But I still remember who I am," she added. even when I'm dressed like a shadow." He reached for her hand, held it gently. "You've never been a shadow. I just never looked properly." And she smiled at him. Not like a maid, not like a woman begging to be seen, but like someone who had found peace in her own skin. For the first time in his life, Elijah wasn't chasing power. He was learning how to sit still with someone and be real. Later that day, they sat in the garden sharing fried yam wrapped in brown paper, a simple lunch. But Malia turned to him and said softly, "This feels like everything I ever wanted." Elijah reached for her hand again. "Then let's not let it go." She looked at him, unsure. "You mean that?" He nodded. "I don't know what the future looks like, but I know I want you in it." The sun slipped behind the clouds, casting a warm orange glow on their faces. She leaned into him slightly, heart full, eyes soft. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. But she didn't pull away either. And sometimes, silence is the loudest answer of all. Saturday morning came dressed in gold. Birds chirped softly outside the windows, and the breeze carried the scent of fresh hibiscus through the open balcony doors. Malia stood in front of the full length, mirror in the guest room. No longer the servants' quarters. Her black uniform was gone. In its place was a soft cream dress, simple but elegant, with a tiny gold chain resting against her collarbone. It wasn't just the clothes that had changed. It was her eyes, the way she stood now, shoulders straight, chin lifted, heart calm. Downstairs, Elijah was pacing the living room, checking his watch, adjusting the collar of his navy blue shirt. He was nervous, not because he was about to sign a deal or speak at a conference, but because of what he was about to do. Malia descended the stairs slowly, each step measured, her hand brushing lightly over the railing. Elijah looked up, and for a moment time stopped. She wasn't the help anymore. She was the woman who had walked into his house, quietly, and turned the silence into laughter, the cold into comfort. The woman who danced barefoot in a room no one had ever entered his heart from. The woman who reminded him what love without performance looked like. "I feel overdressed," she said, breaking the silence. He smiled. "You look like royalty," she chuckled, cheeks blushing. "Royalty doesn't clean bathrooms." Elijah stepped forward. "Maybe this one does, but not anymore." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny velvet box. Malia's breath caught. "Elijah?" "It's not a ring," he said gently, opening the box to reveal a delicate silver bracelet. "Not yet, but it's a promise." She stared at it. "A promise that this house is no longer a prison, that you are not invisible, that you belong here, with me, however you choose." Malia blinked back tears. She held out her wrist. He placed the bracelet on slowly, his fingers lingering. She whispered, "I never thought someone like me." He stopped her gently. "You're not someone like anything, Malia. You're you, and that's exactly who I want." They stood there, inches apart. This time there was no music, no dancing, just two people choosing each other in a world that never expected them to. From behind the curtain, Ava watched. Her face was unreadable. She had just returned, hoping to reclaim her place. But the house was no longer hers. It had changed. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just whispered, so quiet only the curtain heard it. "He used to look at me like that." Then she turned and walked away, not like a queen, but like someone who had just lost a crown she didn't realize was already slipping. And in its quiet corners, a new queen had risen. Not one dressed in jewels or silk, but in dignity, in grace, in love. The maid who once walked these halls with her eyes down was now walking, with her head held high, hand in hand with the man who finally learned how to look at her and truly see. And as the sun poured through the windows of that once lifeless mansion, Malia smiled, because this time, she wasn't just passing through. She was home. She lost the man, but Ava wasn't about to lose the war. When a billionaire chose his maid over his glamorous fiancé, Ava didn't cry. She watched, waited, and then struck back. One photo, one leak, one whisper to the right media outlet. And suddenly Malia became a scandal. But Ava didn't want attention. She wanted destruction. And as the world turned its cameras on the maid who dared to be loved, Ava smiled from the shadows. Because for her, this wasn't about heartbreak. It was about revenge. Sometimes the person who walks away quietly is the one you should fear most. It started with a photo. Just one. A blurry picture, taken from behind the curtain. A man in a navy blue shirt, slipping a bracelet onto the wrist of a woman in a cream dress. They were standing close. Too close. The caption came hours later, posted by an anonymous gossip account. Is Elijah Grant really dating his maid? Sources say the billionaire CEO has replaced his runway queen with the help. By morning it was everywhere. News blogs, Twitter threads, Instagram reels with dramatic music. Comment sections exploded like wildfire. He downgraded? This girl is smart. I'd dance too if it got me a mansion. Men will always choose peace over pretty. Ava was too loud. Malia didn't even know it had happened until her phone buzzed nonstop. She picked it up, an old android with a cracked corner, and stared in confusion. Her name, her face, the dress she wore just yesterday, Elijah's bracelet on her wrist. The internet knew. The world was watching. She stood frozen in the hallway, the screen still lit in her hand. Outside, paparazzi were already starting to gather by the mansion gate. Ava was smiling, because she had posted the photo. And this was only the beginning. She watched from her luxury car across the street, dark sunglasses hiding her eyes, but not her satisfaction. She had timed it perfectly. The media storm, the shame, the noise, all of it. Elijah had embarrassed her, publicly. Now, he'd see what it meant to lose everything he worked for. Not through fists, not through screams, but through something far deadlier. Reputation. Inside the mansion, Elijah was pacing the study, phone in hand. "Malia," he said, voice tight. "Don't open the door. Don't talk to anyone, not even the staff." She nodded, still holding her phone like it was burning her fingers. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this," she whispered. "I know," he said, stepping closer. "We'll fix it. But, look." She turned her screen toward him. "They're saying I slept my way into your heart. That I planned this." His jaw clenched. "They don't know you. They don't want to." Elijah's lawyer called. His board members texted. "Step away from the situation for optics." Was this relationship appropriate? Do we need to prepare for a scandal? Even his assistant, loyal, precise, asked gently. "Sir, should we relocate her?" That was the final straw. "No," Elijah said coldly. "She stays here. She stays with me." Meanwhile, Ava wasn't done. She called in a favor. An old friend at a magazine. "There's more," she purred into the phone. "Do you want the real tea?" She sent them footage from the mansion's internal security camera. The dance. Malia twirling barefoot, lost in music, smiling like she owned the world. The headline dropped hours later. Maid or mistress? The viral moment that changed Billionaire. Elijah Grant forever. And just like that, Malia wasn't a person anymore. She was a headline. She didn't leave her room for a day. Elijah tried to knock. She didn't answer. The house was quiet again. But this time, not in peace. In heartbreak. Because Malia had grown up with whispers behind her back. But this was different. This was the whole world mocking her joy. Mocking her love. Inside her room, the bracelet still sat on her table. Untouched. She had taken it off the moment the video dropped. Not because she regretted it, but because she was scared. Scared of what she might cost Elijah. Scared of what the world would keep taking. Outside, Elijah sat on the balcony, the one they used to share every evening. Now it was just him. Alone again, until he stood, walked to her door and said softly, "I don't care what they say, Malia. I don't care what they think. I only care about the girl who danced when she thought no one was watching." There was silence, then a quiet click. The door opened. Her eyes were red. But she let him in, and for the first time since the firestorm began. They didn't say much. They just held hands, because sometimes love isn't loud. It's just present. The air in the Grant Tech boardroom was ice. 12 suits, one long table, and Elijah at the head, silent. A screen lit up behind him. His company's market reports. Dropping. Fast. The chairman of the board, Mr. Haynes, cleared his throat. "Elijah, we've stood by a lot. Your tech decisions. Your unorthodox silence. But this?" He pointed at the screen. A paused tabloid headline. "From maid to mistress. Elijah Grant's scandal rocks the tech world." Investors are calling, Haynes continued. Partnerships are freezing. This romance, or whatever it is, it's affecting business. Elijah leaned back. So you want me to fire her? No, Haynes said smoothly. We want you to choose. He raised 2 fingers. Your legacy, or your distraction. Elijah's fingers tapped once on the polished wood table. The sound echoed. Then he stood. Calmly, deliberately, he walked to the screen, eyes skimming the headline without flinching. Then he turned to the board. 12 powerful people who had once hailed him as a visionary. My legacy, he said quietly, was never built on fear. The room stilled. It was built on innovation, on risk, on walking into storms other people ran from. He looked each board member in the eye. I didn't choose her to spite the world. I chose her because for the first time in years, I remembered what peace felt like. A pause. If that costs me your comfort, so be it. Then he pressed the remote. The screen went black. I'll rebuild if I have to, but I won't lose her just to keep you comfortable. And with that, Elijah sat back down, steady, unshaken. The silence that followed was thunderous. That night, Elijah didn't go home. He sat in his office until 3 a.m., staring at a blank message on his phone screen. Malia's name at the top. He didn't type. He didn't delete. He just stared. At the mansion, Malia sat in the garden, the one place that still felt untouched. She had told herself this wouldn't last, that love like this wasn't meant for someone like her. And now, maybe she was right. She stood, walked back inside. Didn't cry, just packed a small bag, just in case. The next day, the knock came. Late morning, quiet but deliberate. Elijah opened the door, and there she was. Ava, back in designer heels, lips painted in bold red, sunglasses dangling from her fingers. Her hair was perfect, her posture poised, but her smile, it didn't touch her eyes. Miss me? She asked, voice like honey laced with vinegar. Elijah didn't blink. I don't have time for this. I'm not here to argue, she interrupted smoothly, stepping forward. I'm here to help, really. He didn't move, didn't trust it, and for good reason. He raised a brow. She walked in like she owned the marble beneath her. You're in trouble, Elijah. And whether you want to admit it or not, I'm the only one who knows how this world works. He folded his arms. Go on. She sat, crossed her legs. Let me come back. Just for optics. No strings. We show the world you're back with someone acceptable, and everything goes back to normal. Deals, funding, image. And Malia? He asked, voice sharp. Ava's smile turned cruel. She leaves quietly. Gets a settlement, and you get your company back. Outside the door, Malia stood frozen. She had only come to return Elijah's sweater, but now she couldn't move, because what she just heard shattered her. Not because Ava offered, but because Elijah hadn't said no. Malia didn't wait. She didn't knock. She didn't ask him to explain. She simply turned around, walked down the hallway, and out through the side door. Quiet as a shadow, just like when she first arrived. She left the sweater folded neatly on the bench outside his study, and on top of it the bracelet. No note, no tears, just silence. She walked all the way to the edge of the estate, rode with nothing but her small, overnight bag and the ache in her chest. The security guards tried to stop her. Miss Malia. She smiled softly. Tell Mr. Grant. I understand. And then she walked through the gates, the same ones she once dreamed beyond. This time without hope, without anger, just a broken kind of grace. Inside, Elijah finally stood. Ava, get out! She blinked. Excuse me? I won't repeat myself. Ava gave a short laugh. After all I just offered? You really think the world will accept someone like her? Get out, he said again, firmer this time. She grabbed her purse and stormed off. But this time, she didn't slam the door, because she'd already won. Or so she thought. Minutes later, Elijah stepped into the hallway and stopped cold. There on the bench outside his study, his sweater folded neatly, and on top of it, the bracelet. His throat tightened. She was gone. Panic rising, he turned and rushed to the gates. Where's Malia? He demanded. One of the guards shifted uncomfortably. She left, sir, on foot. Elijah's eyes darkened. And you let her go? She told us to tell you. The guard hesitated. She said she understood. Elijah didn't speak. He couldn't. His hands curled into fists. But it wasn't anger in his chest. It was the weight of losing something. Someone who never asked for anything but honesty. And now she was gone. That night he stood in her empty quarters. Everything was still the same. The small bed, the cracked mirror, the scent of lavender on her pillow. He sat on the edge of her mattress and finally let his walls break. She had given him love with nothing in return, and now he had everything, except her. The next morning, Elijah didn't go to work. He didn't take calls, didn't answer the board. He only gave one instruction to his driver: find her. They searched everywhere: the bus parks, the restaurant she once worked at, her mother's old neighborhood. Nothing. She had disappeared the same way she had arrived. Quietly, Elijah returned late in the evening, exhausted but determined. He hadn't eaten all day. As he stepped into the mansion, a stack of magazines on the foyer table caught his eye. The same headline screamed across all of them: Elijah Grant, billionaire in love with a maid? Exclusive. Scandal secrets and a woman gone missing. He stared at the cover for a long moment, then made a decision. The next day, reporters crowded the atrium of Grant Tech HQ. Cameras flashed. Phones recorded. This wasn't about software anymore. It was about scandal. Elijah stepped up to the mic. Black suit, no tie, no script. The room hushed. I've always let my work speak for me. He began, voice steady. But lately, noise has spoken louder than truth. He looked straight into the cameras. There is a woman I care about. Her name is Malia, and yes, she worked in my home. But she is not a scandal. She is not a mistake. And she is not leaving because you think she should. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I will not apologize for seeing something rare and real in someone the world tried to overlook. If you want to pull your funding because I love a woman who cleaned my floors, do it. I'll rebuild. A single flashbulb popped. I'm not ashamed of her. I'm ashamed it took me this long to say that. Then he stepped back, walked away, didn't answer a single question. Malia was at the salon where she now worked part-time. When the video came on the small TV mounted in the corner, the room had been buzzing with chatter, until Elijah's face appeared on screen. She froze mid-sweep, her hand still clutching the broom, eyes locked on the TV. The salon fell silent. No one said a word. Malia didn't move. She didn't even blink. Because for the first time, Elijah had chosen her. Not in secret, not behind closed doors, but in front of the whole world. The salon buzzed with chatter after the press conference, but Malia heard none of it. One of the stylists nudged her gently. Girl, that man loves you. Malia gave a soft smile, but her eyes said otherwise. Because love was one thing, belonging was another. That night she sat on the small bed in her aunt's apartment, where she'd been staying quietly since leaving the mansion. The TV replayed Elijah's press conference on a loop. She stared at the screen, unsure what to feel, because the words were beautiful. But she had been hurt before. People could say anything when the cameras were rolling. Her aunt, a kind-faced woman with sharp eyes, sat beside her. You know he meant it, she said gently. Malia didn't respond. You think love is about avoiding pain? Her aunt asked. I think love shouldn't come with humiliation. Malia replied softly. Her aunt reached over and held her hand. You're right. But that man stood up in front of the world. That counts for something. I don't want to be someone he defends. Malia whispered. I want to be someone he respects. And maybe now, her aunt said, you're finally both. Meanwhile, Elijah sat alone in his living room, staring at the empty hallway where Malia used to sweep and hum softly to herself. He missed her laugh, missed her grace, missed the sound of her mug in the morning. He had done what he could. Now all he could do was wait. 3 days passed. Then came a knock at the mansion door. Not reporters, not Ava. Just a quiet courier in a brown vest, holding a small envelope addressed to Elijah Grant. Handwritten, neat, no return address. He opened it slowly. It, faintly of lavender. Dear Elijah, I watched your press conference. I didn't expect that. And I don't know what it cost you to say those things. But thank you. You always told me silence can be louder than words. But your words were louder than anything I've ever heard. Still, I don't know if I'm ready to come back. Not because I don't care, but because I do. You see me now. And that means more than you know. But I need to learn how to see myself, too. Outside of your house, your name, your world. I was someone before I put on your bracelet. I need to remember that girl. And if one day I come back, I want it to be not as your maid, not as your heartbreak, but as your equal. Until then, dance whenever you hear that song. And maybe think of me. Malia. Elijah sat still for a long time after reading it. He folded the letter carefully, pressed it to his chest, and whispered, I'll wait. Because sometimes, love doesn't demand the next chapter right away. Sometimes it just needs patience. The sun rose gently over the city. No headlines this time. No flashing lights. Just soft light spilling through the windows of a small classroom, where Malia now stood, gently erasing a chalkboard. She had finally enrolled in the part-time teacher's training program she once dreamed of. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't loud. But it was hers. And every morning as the children trickled into the classroom, calling her Auntie Malia, with bright eyes and toothy smiles, something in her heart healed. Piece by piece, day by day. After class, Malia worked evening shifts at a quiet cafe. She tied her apron the same way she once tied her maid uniform. But this time, it didn't feel like hiding. Because when she looked in the mirror now, she didn't just see someone surviving. She saw a woman growing into herself. Piece by piece. She wasn't rich. She wasn't on magazine covers. But she was steady. She was healing. And for the first time in her life, she felt whole. Across town, Elijah had changed. He no longer chased headlines. He let the board complain, let investors talk. He closed off part of his office, let go of most of the mansion's staff, even told Ava's decorator to stop calling. And little by little, his home began to feel real. Less cold glass, more warmth, more him. Every Friday, he placed a new envelope in his desk drawer. A letter to Malia. Letters he never mailed. Some were just a few words. I missed your laugh today. Others were longer. I saw a burgundy dress in a shop window. You would have loved it. You'd have twirled. But every letter ended the same way. Still waiting. Still yours. And then, something surprising happened. People began to change their minds. The same blogs that once mocked them now praised their quiet love. One headline read, "A true love story." Another said, "She left and he still waited." Even Ava, now quietly engaged to another rich CEO, posted a mysterious message, "Let go of what was never yours before it teaches you humility." Elijah said nothing. Malia stayed quiet. They simply kept growing, becoming who they were meant to be. It was a quiet Saturday. The cafe where Malia worked was busy, but peaceful. Mothers with kids, students reading, couples talking in low voices. Malia was cleaning a table near the window, her apron tied neatly and her hair tucked under a scarf. Then the bell above the door rang. She didn't look up at first, until a familiar voice said gently, "One black coffee. And, if you have it, a slice of banana bread." Her heart stopped. Slowly she turned. There he was, Elijah Grant. No suit, just jeans, a plain shirt, and that familiar look in his eyes. Calm, sure, quiet. Malia blinked. Found you," he said softly. Her lips parted, but she couldn't speak. He added, "I didn't plan this. I just came for coffee. But maybe fate had something else in mind." Malia tried to smile, but her lips trembled. "You're not supposed to be here." "Maybe not," he said. "But I'm here anyway." She looked down at the tray in her hand. Then he gently reached across the counter. "Just one question," he said. "Are you okay?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, I'm okay. And are you happy?" This time she looked up. "I'm learning to be." He smiled. "Good." Then he pulled a folded letter from his pocket. Creased, aged. "I wrote to you every week," he said. "I never sent them. But I brought this one, just in case." She stared at it, unsure. He placed it gently on the counter and stepped back. "I'll let you get back to work," he said, voice low. "But if you ever want to talk about anything, don't wait for fate next time." He turned to leave. Malia stood frozen. Then she reached out. Her hand trembled slightly as she touched the edge of his shirt. "Elijah." He stopped. She swallowed. "Do you still dance?" He looked back, a flicker of hope in his eyes. "Only if someone leads. She smiled, soft, unsure, real, and whispered, "Then wait till I close tonight." The cafe closed at 9. Malia flipped the sign to closed, locked the door, and turned off the main lights, leaving only the warm glow from the wall sconces. Elijah was still there, sitting quietly in the corner booth, waiting. No phone, no laptop, just presence. She walked toward him slowly, her heart beating fast with every step. "I haven't danced in a long time," she said quietly. He stood up. "Me neither." She looked around the empty cafe. "There's no music." He smiled, pulled a small speaker from his pocket, and turned it on. Then came the song, the same one she danced to at the mansion, the one that made her feel free, before the world found out. Now it played again, but this time, there was no shame, no hiding, just the two of them. Malia stepped into his arms. No hesitation now. Her hands rested on his shoulders. His found her waist, and they began to sway, slow, gentle. Together, outside rain began to fall, softly like a lullaby. Inside, their steps were quiet, feet brushing against old floorboards, hearts sinking like second hands on the same clock. Malia rested her cheek against his chest. He whispered, "I never stopped choosing you." She looked up at him. "I never stopped remembering how you saw me." He smiled and kissed her forehead. Just that. No rush, no noise. Just reverence. They didn't talk much after the dance. Elijah walked her home in the rain, holding nothing but an umbrella in her hand. She didn't need a mansion to feel safe anymore. She just needed him to walk beside her. Weeks went by, then months. The world moved on. But in a small house near a primary school in a street full of hibiscus flowers, Malia opened her daycare. Malia's Little Lights. She built it with Elijah's support and her own hard work. Elijah didn't chase fame anymore. Now he made breakfast. And at night, sometimes, they danced in the living room, wearing socks and pajamas, not for the world, just for each other. One evening, under the quiet stars above their home, Malia stepped out onto the porch. Elijah followed and gently wrapped his arm around her. She looked up at him and smiled. "You still think you can dance?" He laughed softly. "Only if you lead." There was no ex hiding behind the curtain anymore. No one watching. No drama, no noise. Just them. Two people who had been through pain, loss, and storms, and still chose each other. Not because it was easy, but because it was real. So they danced. Not for show. Not to prove anything. Just to say, "We made it." Malia never wanted fame. She just wanted peace. A classroom. A soft life. A love that didn't need applause. But when the world finally saw her, it didn't clap. It whispered. It judged. It crowned her a symbol and waited for her to crack. Now the maid who once danced alone finds herself at the center of a storm she never asked for. Scandal, headlines, secrets, envy, and a love the world keeps trying to rewrite. This isn't just a love story anymore. It's a quiet woman's fight to be heard, without raising her voice. And as she rises, so does the pressure. Because the higher she climbs, the more they try to pull her down. This is the final part of Malia and Elijah's story. And no, it doesn't start with a kiss. It starts with a question. Can love still feel safe when the world keeps knocking at the door? Stick around, because the crown she never asked for is about to change everything. Malia never wanted to be famous. She wanted to teach children, to watch them grow, to give them the kind of gentle safety she never had. That's all. No stage, no spotlight. But sometimes the world chooses your story, even if you never asked for it. It started with a blog post. A mother who had visited Malia's Little Lights wrote a piece titled, "The Woman Who Taught My Child More Than a Classroom Ever Could." She talked about Malia's patience, her warmth, the way she knelt to eye level when a child was crying, the way her hands knew how to comfort without asking for attention. She didn't mention Elijah, not once. It wasn't about him anymore. It was about her. The post went viral within hours. Parenting forums reposted it. Celebrities quoted it. Someone on Twitter said, "The maid who danced alone is now building a generation. I'm not crying, you are." And just like that, Malia became a movement. People began showing up outside the daycare. Some with flowers, some with cameras, some with curious eyes that didn't know whether to admire her or pick her apart. Malia kept her head down. She still arrived by 6:45 a.m., swept the floor, and greeted every child by name. She still washed their cups herself, even though she had 2 assistants now. But inside, she felt the pressure rising. They were calling her a symbol, but symbols aren't allowed to have bad days. Symbols aren't allowed to cry in the staff bathroom. Symbols don't get to be human. One evening after closing time, she sat at her small desk, surrounded by glitter glue and finger paintings. Her hands were still sticky from helping a 4-year-old finish a sun-shaped collage. Elijah came by with dinner. She smiled when she saw him, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "You okay?" he asked, placing the food down gently. She nodded. "Just a lot." He didn't push. He just sat beside her quietly, the way he always did when she was unraveling. "I didn't mean for the world to see me this way," she whispered. He reached for her hand. "The world didn't give you anything," he said softly. They just finally opened their eyes. She looked at him, really looked, and for a moment the weight on her chest lifted. Because maybe, just maybe, she wasn't wearing a crown. Maybe she was the crown, and it had been hers all along. At Malia's Little Lights, the hallway still smelled of crayons and warm cereal. Children's laughter echoed off the soft yellow walls. On the surface, everything was perfect, but in the shadows, trouble was stirring. It began with a comment, just one, on a video clip showing Malia teaching a group of toddlers how to tie their shoelaces. Cute, but let's be honest. Would people care if she hadn't slept her way to a billionaire? The comment got thousands of likes. Then came a thread, then a think piece, then a podcast episode titled, "Love or Leverage? When Maid turned mogul becomes a brand." And just like that, Malia's love story was repackaged as a strategy. Inside the daycare, Malia stayed focused. She held little Sophia when she scraped her knee. She clapped when Michael wrote the letter M without help. She kept showing up. But outside, bloggers were saying Elijah funded the entire daycare. Parenting forums debated whether she had the qualifications to run a school. People dissected her silence, her smile, her past. And when a reporter showed up uninvited at pickup time and snapped photos of the kids, Malia had had enough. She stood in front of the daycare gate, calm but firm. No interviews. No cameras. These are children, not clickbait. Her voice didn't tremble. Her eyes didn't flinch. She turned and walked back in, and every parent in line clapped quietly as she passed. But the backlash still hurt. That night she sat at the edge of her bed, scrolling through hate posts she never meant to read. Let's see if she's still glowing without Elijah's wallet. From mop to miracle. Must be nice. She clicked the screen off and buried her phone in her drawer. She didn't cry, but her chest felt tight. Meanwhile, Elijah sat in a meeting with his media strategist. "We need to shut it down," the woman said. "The backlash is bleeding into your investor confidence again. Her image affects you." Elijah stared at the slide deck in silence, then said quietly, "No, we can do an interview. Reframe the narrative." "I'm not here to spin love," he said. "I'm here to stand by it." He stood, ending the meeting, because to him Malia was not a liability. She was his light. The next day, he showed up at the daycare without warning, wearing jeans and a hoodie, carrying a tray of chin-chin and a thermos of hot cocoa. "I thought the staff could use a break," he said casually. The moment the parents saw him, with Malia laughing, it was captured on camera, and within hours, it was trending again. The billionaire bakes for the daycare queen. But Malia didn't smile when she saw the clip. She just sighed, because she hadn't asked for this crown. And now, it was getting heavier. Ava Daniels had been quiet for months. Too quiet. After her dramatic exit from the mansion, she vanished from the headlines. There were even whispers of a quiet engagement to another wealthy CEO. But that too had quietly crumbled. Then she returned, with curated vengeance. New hairstyle. A rebranded fashion blog, a rising podcast titled The Daniels Standard. She was sleek, elegant, brutal, and her latest episode? A bomb with Malia's name on it. She's just the maid he's parading. Today we're talking about power, how some women clean their way to it, and how the public mistakes silence for strength. Spoiler alert, it's still gold digging if you whisper while doing it. She didn't say Malia's name. She didn't have to. The episode trended within hours. Clips flooded social media. Ava, polished in her white studio, red lipstick sharp as glass. We glamorize Cinderella stories. But let's not forget, Cinderella still married up. Let's not pretend scrubbing toilets is the same as building empires. People shared it, laughed, reacted with fire emojis. And just like that, Ava was relevant again. Later that evening, Malia opened her inbox and found a message that made her hands go cold. Ava wants to pop in for a podcast segment about empowered women. Said it'll boost your school's visibility. Malia stared at it. She didn't reply. But Ava didn't wait for permission. 3 days later, she arrived unannounced, dressed in ivory, heels clicking like punctuation marks. Her assistant carried a phone on a selfie stick, filming everything. Here I am at Malia's Little Lights. A noble little space started by someone who cleaned her way into headlines. Inside the classroom, Malia was helping a child paint a sun. She looked up, froze. Ava smiled. Don't worry, darling. I'm just here to say hi, support women and all that. They stepped into the staff room, alone. Ava leaned on the door, voice smooth as silk. I have to admit, you surprised me. You went from invisible to viral, didn't you? Malia said nothing, just met her eyes. Ava walked closer. But let's be honest. You don't belong in his world. You're a phase, a lesson. One day he'll remember who he is, and you'll still be tying kids' shoelaces. Silence. Then Malia stood, calm, steady. No, she said. One day you'll remember who you used to be, before the world made you bitter. Ava's smile faltered for just a second, and in that second, Malia added quietly, I'm not in his world. We're building a new one, together. That clip, recorded secretly by Ava's assistant, leaked within hours. But instead of destroying Malia, it turned her into something else. A voice. A woman who didn't need to scream. A woman who didn't need to win. Because she had already grown. The sun dipped behind the clouds as Malia stepped out of the daycare, apron in hand, her chest still tight from Ava's visit. She hadn't told Elijah. Not yet. She didn't want to make it bigger than it already was. But someone else did. The video of her calm response to Ava, captured and leaked by the assistant, was now everywhere. We're building a new world. Together. The internet went mad. She ate gracefully. This is how queens speak. Whew, I felt that in my bones. Even people who once mocked her began reposting, the clip with quiet apologies in the captions. But Malia didn't see any of it. She was still on her feet, still unsure if this storm would pass or break her. He had watched the video. He had read the comments. He had seen how they analyzed every part of her response like it was a show. He didn't say anything. He just stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her. Right there, in front of the gates, in front of the school. She sank into him, and for the first time in days, she let the weight fall. Her face pressed into his chest. His hand slid up to the back of her head, and he whispered, I saw how you stood tall, but you don't have to be strong for me. Not all the time. Her arms tightened around him. They didn't speak for a long moment, until she whispered, voice trembling, It's too much sometimes, Elijah. I know, he said. She pulled back slightly, eyes red. I'm scared. He wiped a tear from her cheek gently. Then be scared. I'm not going anywhere. She looked at him, the man who had once walked past her like she was air, now, holding her like she was the ground beneath his feet. And something shifted again. Not the public, not the perception, but her belief that maybe this love wasn't a firestorm waiting to collapse. Maybe it was a shelter. And this, the way Elijah held her, was how she knew she wasn't alone anymore. It started with a letter, folded neatly, slipped into the mailbox at the daycare. No stamp, no name, just 5 printed words on white paper. Children deserve better than you. Malia stared at it for a full minute before folding it back. Then she locked the office door, sat down, and didn't move. Outside, the children played. Inside, her hands trembled. She had handled whispers before, handled Ava, handled headlines. But something about that letter, the cold finality of it, hit a place inside her she didn't know was still soft. She stared at the tiny potted plant on her desk, the one Elijah gave her when she opened the school. Its leaves were wilting. She hadn't watered it in 3 days. She didn't even realize. Later that day, a parent pulled their child from the school. No reason. Just silence and a forced smile. Another one sent a message. We love what you're doing, but the attention makes us uncomfortable. By evening, Malia was scrubbing glitter off the floor. Alone. Her body moved, but her mind was screaming. She spilled the mop water, cut her hand picking up the bucket, and still didn't cry until she reached the bathroom, locked the door, looked into the mirror, and whispered, maybe they're right. She slid down against the cold tiles, pressed her hand over her mouth so no one would hear. Not the staff, not the kids, not Elijah, because love was beautiful, but humiliation was louder, and she couldn't bear to be the reason he lost respect. That night, Elijah waited outside. He didn't see her tears, but when she came out, her eyes were dull, her voice low. Can we just not talk tonight? He didn't ask questions. He just nodded, held the car door open, and let her sit in silence, because that's what she needed, and that's what he was learning to give her. But when they got home, she went straight to the bedroom. Didn't eat, didn't change, didn't even take off her shoes. Elijah stood outside the door, helpless. Then he whispered through the wood, You don't have to shine for anyone, Malia. You don't owe the world magic every day, but you'll always be enough for me. She didn't open the door, but the next morning, she watered the plant and decided not to give up. It was a Wednesday. Ordinary, until it wasn't. The bell above the daycare door jingled softly. Malia looked up from the art corner, a paintbrush in one hand, glue on her apron, and there she was, Ava Daniels, back again. Red heels, black sunglasses, lips the color of battle. She took off her shades slowly, surveying the room like she was stepping back into a museum she once critiqued. Hello again, darling, she said smoothly. The assistants froze. One even dropped a crayon box. Malia stood, calmly. Ava, she said. Just that. I figured a proper visit was overdue. Ava continued, voice dripping with something too sweet to be real. You've done so well for yourself. A little school, a little fame. Malia didn't flinch. The children watched quietly from behind a bookshelf, sensing the tension. Ava walked slowly through the daycare, eyes trailing the wall art, the playbooks, the mini library. So domestic, she said with a smile. It's almost cute. Malia folded her arms gently. What do you want this time, Ava? Ava turned, eyes narrowing. To give you a chance. A chance? To walk away. Before the world finishes what it started. Malia took a deep breath. Then she walked over to a little boy struggling to button his shirt. She knelt gently beside him and said softly, Lift your arms, sweetheart. That's it. She helped him, smiled, then stood up. She turned to Ava, calm, steady. I'm not scared of you, Malia said. Not anymore. I was never trying to compete with you, Ava. This was never a game to me. Ava gave a small, smug smile, but Malia stepped closer, just enough to meet her eyes. You throw people's pasts at them like stones, but all I did was survive mine and build something better from the pieces. Ava didn't move, didn't speak. Malia's voice didn't shake. You can mock me. Drag my name on your podcast. Whisper whatever you like. But in this room, in this world I built, your voice doesn't matter. And I don't need the world to clap for me. I just need to keep showing up. For a moment, Ava looked shaken. Just a flicker. Then she scoffed. This place won't last. You're not built for the pressure. Malia nodded slowly. Maybe not. But I'm still here. Still standing. She walked to the door and held it open. And just like that, Ava was the one being dismissed. She paused in the doorway, looked back. Malia didn't say anything. She didn't need to, because that was the real wound. And Ava finally walked away, heels clicking with less conviction than before. That evening, Malia swept the floor with a calm heart. She had faced Ava, and this time she didn't shrink. Because true power doesn't come from being loved loudly. It comes from being unshaken when someone tries to make you small. It wasn't her idea. At first, Malia said no, over and over. No interviews, no cameras, no statements. But one afternoon, after Ava's second podcast went viral, after another parent withdrew their child, after a reporter ambushed her on her lunch break, Malia sat in Elijah's office. Drained, he poured her tea, and said quietly, "Then say something, Malia. Not for them. For you." She didn't answer right away, but that night, lying awake beside him, she whispered, "I'm tired of being rewritten." 3 days later, she sat on a simple set. One couch, one host, one camera. No glam, no makeup team, no script, just Malia. Cream blouse, minimal jewelry, bare face. The host was kind but direct. "Why now?" Malia took a breath. "I think I spent most of my life trying not to be noticed," she began. "And then one day, the world noticed me all at once. But they didn't see me. Just a story." The host nodded. "What do you want people to know?" Malia looked straight into the camera. "That I'm not perfect. That I never meant to be anyone's fairy tale. I was a maid. I cleaned floors. I danced barefoot when I thought no one was watching. And that moment changed everything. Not because I was trying to rise, but because someone finally looked. And in that moment, I wasn't invisible." Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. "I didn't ask for fame. I asked for peace. For a life where I could teach children, build something soft and be loved gently." She looked down for a second, then added, "If that threatens anyone, then maybe it's not me they're afraid of. Maybe it's what I represent. That someone can come from nothing and still be worthy." The interview went live that evening. Within 2 hours, it hit 1 million views. By midnight, the hashtags were trending. "Daughter Malia speaks. From maid to mentor. Thought worthy without permission." One commenter wrote, "I cried. She's every girl who was ever told to stay small." Another said, "Forget Ava. Forget the scandals. This is who she is." And across town, Elijah watched it all in silence, then pulled out another letter from his drawer. He added just 4 words at the end of it. "I see you now." It was Sunday afternoon. The sun was warm but not harsh. The breeze smelled of hibiscus and early rain. Malia wore a soft sky-blue dress and no shoes, her feet aching from a long week of teaching. Elijah drove her in silence, not because something was wrong, but because some moments didn't need words. She didn't ask where they were going. She trusted him now, completely. They pulled into a quiet lot, not far from the school. What she saw first was nothing remarkable, just a patch of land, fenced, still raw, still growing. But when she stepped out of the car, she noticed the small wooden sign near the entrance gate. Little roots, big lights. A garden for Malia's children. Her breath caught. "Elijah, what is this?" He smiled softly. "You once said the children needed more than books. They needed earth, space, color." She walked slowly into the garden. Small raised beds were already taking shape. Tomatoes, spinach, peppers. A corner for flowers. A corner for herbs. A low wooden bench shaped like a butterfly. "I've been working on it with some parents," he said behind her. "One of them designs community gardens. I just provided the land." Malia turned to him. Her hands touched the bench like it was glass. "You built this?" she whispered. He nodded. "Not to impress you," he said. "To honor you. You take care of so many lives. I wanted to build something that could keep growing, even on days when you feel like shrinking." Malia walked slowly to the middle of the garden. She knelt, touched the soil, smiled through sudden tears. "I used to think the only thing I'd ever grow was pain," she said quietly. Elijah stepped beside her, took her hand. "Then let this garden be your reminder," he whispered. "You've been planting light all along." She leaned into him, not to be saved, but because this garden, this love, was rooted now. And some things, once rooted, bloom forever. The invitation came on glossy cardstock. Charity Gala for Girls in STEM, presented by the Ava Daniels Foundation. Malia raised an eyebrow when she saw the name. Elijah, reading over her shoulder, simply said, "She's trying." Malia didn't plan to attend, but the press had already whispered. Malia versus Ava face to face at the gala. And honestly, Malia was tired of the verses. The gala shimmered under chandeliers, silk gowns, crystal glasses, flashes from paparazzi just outside the marble steps. Ava entered fashionably late, as always. Silver gown, perfect waves, a presence that made necks turn. But this time, there was no fire in her eyes, No dagger in her smile. Just resolve. Elijah wasn't there. He stayed home, on purpose. I don't want you to feel like I'm shielding you, he told Malia earlier. This is your moment, not mine. So Malia walked in alone. Cream satin dress, simple braid crown, no jewelry, except the silver bracelet he gave her. People watched. The girl who once scrubbed floors had now become someone the elite couldn't ignore. Ava found her at the edge of the room, near the dessert table. I didn't think you'd come, she said. Malia smiled politely. I didn't think you'd invite me. I didn't, Ava replied. They both laughed softly. Then Ava looked out at the room. The lights, the chatter, the empty conversations wrapped in diamonds. You were right, you know, she said, voice lower now. Malia turned slightly. About what? I was bitter. A pause. I still am sometimes. Malia waited. Then Ava added, but I was never the right woman for him. I just didn't want to be forgotten. Her voice cracked for the first time. I spent so long trying to be unforgettable. I didn't notice I was becoming someone even I couldn't recognize. Malia didn't gloat. She didn't preach. She just reached forward and gently placed a chocolate tart in Ava's hand. Start with dessert, she said quietly. Sometimes sweetness helps. Ava blinked, then actually smiled. It didn't touch her lips. It touched her eyes. The next morning, Ava sat in her podcast studio. No glam team, no audience, just the mic. And her voice. She took a slow breath, then began. We were never a fairy tale. He found one somewhere else. And I wish her well. She paused. No music under it, no edits. Just truth. No hashtags. No viral sound bites. No follow-up promo. Just peace. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, Ava Daniels let go of the crown. The day started like any other. Spilled juice, shoelaces, crayons missing their wrappers. Malia wiped a child's nose with one hand while handing another. A glue stick with the other. It was loud. It was sticky. It was perfect. Elijah arrived around 4 p.m. He wore a dark green button-down, sleeves rolled up, collar loose. No suit, no headlines following him today. Just him. He watched her from the classroom door. Her soft command over the chaos, her laughter echoing like music through finger-painted walls. And he smiled like a man who had already found everything. Mr. Elijah, the kids shouted. He knelt down, high-fived each of them. You're here, one girl said. Do you want snack? Another asked. No snacks today, he whispered, then tapped the side of his nose. I have a surprise. After circle time, Malia noticed something unusual. The children had gone quiet, too quiet, and then they parted like a sea, revealing Elijah in the center of the room, down on one knee, holding not a velvet box, but a paper ring made from colored construction paper, taped together by tiny hands. The kids clapped wildly. Malia froze. Her heart jumped. Elijah, what are you doing? He looked up at her. Calm, warm, serious in the most gentle way. I could have done this with diamonds, with cameras, with rich people applauding. But this classroom, these walls, this noise, this is your world. And I want to live in it. The children gasped as he held up the ring. Malia, he said, voice steady. Will you let me grow beside you? Will you dance with me for the rest of our lives? She didn't move, didn't breathe. Then slowly, very slowly, she stepped forward, kneeled down, and whispered, eyes brimming. I thought I had to choose between being loved and being seen. But with you, I get both? She let him slip the paper ring on her finger. The children exploded with cheers. But Malia and Elijah just laughed. And in that laughter, in that classroom, they sealed a promise louder than gold ever could. There were no helicopters, no celebrity guests, no designer gowns on magazine covers. Just one simple email invitation sent to a small circle. Join us for a celebration of love. No need for gifts. Just come as you are. The ceremony was held in the garden behind Malia's little lights. Yes, that garden. The one Elijah built. The one the children helped plant. The one where peace lived. Rows of white chairs. Sunflowers in mason jars. A small speaker playing soft high life music. No red carpets. Just green grass and sunlight. Malia wore a soft white dress. Not silk, not lace, just honest cotton, with tiny embroidered flowers near the hem, stitched by one of the mothers from the school. Her braid was pinned low. No veil, no crown, only a single silver bracelet on her wrist. The one she once took off during the scandal, now returned to stay. She walked barefoot down the garden aisle, hand in hand with a little girl from her class tossing petals. The children clapped. Some forgot to stay seated. No one minded. Elijah stood waiting beneath the arch, wearing a navy blue shirt and khaki pants. No tie, no stress, just his heart on display. When he saw her, he smiled so softly, it made even the flowers look shy. They didn't write long vows. Malia said, "You didn't rescue me. You reminded me that I was always whole, even when the world only saw pieces." Elijah said, "You didn't change my life. You gave it breath and made every moment finally feel like truth." Then came the moment everyone held their breath for. "By the power vested in—" The children screamed before the officiant could finish. "You may kiss the bride." Laughter erupted, and Elijah kissed her. Slow, tender, full of everything they had survived to get there. From a distance, Ava watched. She wasn't invited, but she didn't storm in, didn't cry, didn't post. She just stood at the edge of the field in a quiet gray coat, watching the two people who had learned to love without needing permission. She pulled her sunglasses down, eyes glossy, but this time with acceptance. Then she whispered, "He really did love you better," and walked away, not like a villain, not like a queen, just like someone finally free. That night, beneath string lights and soft music, Malia and Elijah danced barefoot on the grass. Her head rested gently on his shoulder. His arms held her like he finally understood peace. They swayed, not to impress, not for tradition, but because joy demanded movement. It wasn't grand. It wasn't loud. But it was everything. Because sometimes, the best wedding is the quiet one. No one saw coming. Months passed. The headlines faded. The cameras moved on. But Malia's little lights only grew brighter. What started as one small daycare was now 2 buildings and a mobile classroom van. They called it the Light Bus. A colorful van that drove to low income neighborhoods every Saturday, filled with books, toys, chalkboards, and hope. Malia sat in the passenger seat every week, hair tied up, clipboard in hand, smile steady. The kids called her Auntie Malia the Butterfly, because she always told them, even if you start in a dark place, you're still meant to fly. She was invited to speak at women's conferences, not because of Elijah, not because of the scandal, because she knew what it meant to build something with your bare hands, while the world watched and waited for you to fail. Her speech clips were shared by activists, mothers, even celebrities. You don't have to start loud to make impact. Sometimes quiet women build empires. And yet, Malia never changed the way she moved. She still swept the floor sometimes, still sat on the carpet with the kids. One reporter asked her, "Why haven't you hired more staff? You're running a foundation now." Malia smiled. "Because I don't want to lead from a desk. I want to lead from the floor." One night after dinner, Malia sat with a group of teenage girls from her mentoring program. One of them raised her hand. "Auntie, were you really a maid before all this?" Malia paused, then smiled. "Still am." They blinked. She continued. "I still clean, still fold clothes, still know how to scrub sadness off a window. But now, I also own the building I clean in. So yes, I was a maid, but I never let that be my whole name." The girls clapped. Some teared up, and in that moment they didn't see a scandal or a fairy tale bride. They saw a woman who fought her way into freedom and left the door open for them to follow. The rain came gently that night, not a storm, just soft drops kissing the rooftop, as if even the sky knew it needed to be quiet. Inside their home, Elijah sat on the porch, a book in hand. The lights inside were warm, the world outside, peaceful. Then Malia stepped out. She wore a t-shirt, lounge pants, and her silver bracelet. No makeup, no performance, just her. She carried 2 mugs of tea, one with honey, she said, handing him his. Elijah smiled. "You still remember?" "I remember everything," she said softly. They sat in silence for a while, The kind of silence only two people in love could enjoy. Then, a sound, a song, playing faintly from the speaker Elijah had left on inside the living room. That song, the one she'd danced to barefoot all those months ago, the one that started everything. She looked at him. He looked at her. He stood slowly, held out his hand. "One last dance?" She chuckled, setting down her tea. "You always say that." "Then one more last dance." She took his hand, barefoot on the wooden porch, rain tapping the rooftop above, string lights glowing overhead. They swayed, no fancy footwork, no audience, just love, wrapped in quiet. Malia rested her head on his chest. Elijah kissed her hair. "I used to think love had to prove itself," she whispered. "And now?" he asked. "Now I know. Real love doesn't need an audience. It just needs to stay." They kept dancing. No music left. Just the rhythm of rain. And memory. The porch glowed softly, their feet bare, the world quiet. And in that stillness, they found what they had both been searching for. Not noise, not applause, not perfection, but peace. Because in the end, Malia wasn't just the maid who fell in love with a billionaire. She was the woman who showed the world that quiet doesn't mean invisible, that you don't need to shout to be strong, and you don't need a crown to be chosen. She had once scrubbed sadness off windows. Now she opened doors. And Elijah? He didn't just love her back. He built a life that made space for her light to shine. Together they rewrote the story, not with grand gestures, but with steady hands, soft words, and the courage to stay. The end. Thank you for watching the final part of a full, young billionaire walked in on his maid dancing. If this story touched your heart, drop a comment below. Like, share, and subscribe for more unforgettable love stories. And remember, never underestimate someone just because the world doesn't see them. The invisible today could become someone's whole world tomorrow.